Well, it's Saturday the 29th of May. This is episode 2121 of 301 Permanently Moved.online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded and edited by me, at the JMO. The first job I had after graduating uni was for a large American high street bookshop chain. My colleagues there were brilliant, and many are still close friends to this day. The head office and upper management were all idiots though, which is probably why they went bankrupt in 2008. There's a two-part story that I've often told about working in that shop. The first part is presented as an ironic observation. You would be surprised by the number of people who would come into a bookstore and ask where the self-help section was. I mean, if you have to ask where the clearly signposted self-help books were, then you clearly need them. When I tell this story to affluent graduates in tech startups, whatever, it always elicits a chuckle and a laugh. Oh, the irony. But the story doesn't end there, because no one ever confidently entered a bookshop and marched straight up to the help desk to ask where the self-help section was. After a while, you begin to recognize the signs that this is what someone is going to ask you about, mainly because they even struggle to ask the question. Let me be clear, lest your imaginations are running riot trying to picture the sort of sad sap who has to ask for help finding the self-help section. It was all kinds of people. Students, teenagers, men and women in office clothes, old people, the well-dressed, all sorts. Anyone really. But they would all hang about nervously near the help desk, pretending to browse the poetry books, looking around occasionally, hoping to make eye contact and for me to make the first move. Which, if you know me, is perhaps not the best subtle social signalling when dealing with me. Sometimes 10, 15 minutes would go by. Folks would get anxious and agitated, psyching themselves up emotionally. If you reach out too early in this process, you'll get, "No, I'm all right, thanks," and they would scurry out of the store. And whilst I understand this strategy, it does make things awkward, as I would still be at the info desk when they return the next week to try again. But most people would make their move with a decisive nod. "Excuse me, could you please tell me where the self-help section is?" Or they would bail and slink away, and it was then that you'd deploy the "Can I help at all?" customer service charm. It was honestly heartbreaking sometimes. Please just come and ask me, I'd think, whilst pretending that the other person wasn't pretending not to want to talk to me. And the reason why I always add this second part of the story about the awkward and heartbreaking moments before they ask the question is because asking for help is a big deal. The cultural conversation about mental health was nowhere near as loud as it is today, and there was no late-night online book order for delivery the next day. I have no idea what was going on in their life, why they were there, or what they wanted, but I always sensed that them asking that question was an important moment. It was somehow about seeking permission to walk across the shop floor and find help for themselves. You had about 20 seconds to then dissipate the previous 20 minutes of anxiety as you wound them through the aisles to the double-wide bay of books. 4 whole shelves of self-help and pop psychology material. Some would then be happy to be left to browse, but others would ask the difficult question, "Can you recommend something?" Who knows what's going on in that other human's life while they stood there, perhaps at the threshold of a new life found between the pages of a book. If pressed though, I would always recommend The Secret. It was new, I loved it, and it was, and still is, a bestseller. Plus you can't go all that wrong with anything influenced by Blavatsky. We used to be able to borrow books from the shop. It was the best thing about working there after the people. I had 2 hours of bus rides a day, so maybe read 3 to 4 books a week. After I broke up with my ex, I read self-help books exclusively. I still read them now. I like to see what's trending and what's new. The Amazon self-help charts are a psychic barometer for society. Recently, books about personal productivity have fallen away, replaced by top sellers about dealing with anxiety, trauma, self-healing, and grit. 12 Rules for Life has been joined by David Goggins, Daniel Howe, and Ant Middleton. For those wondering, the 2 books that changed my life the most are Getting Things Done by David Alan Green and The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by the living saint Marie Kondo. But I digress. As I said earlier, if people asked me to recommend a book, I'd usually try and demur. I'd already led the horse to water. Anyways, I say this today as I've been thinking this week that it's not the self-help part that's the hard bit. It's plucking up the courage to ask the question at the help desk to begin with, because once you've asked, you're already on your way. Speaking of help, if you regularly enjoy listening to this show and want to help me keep it going, please consider supporting the show from 57p an episode or £5 a month at thejmo.net/support.